Okay, so we are live with the package maintenance meeting on the 19th of May 2020, and we will follow the agenda issue, which is, let me just find it, in the package maintenance repo, and it's issue 361. And as usual, I'll start with, are there any announcements to make? Nope. Okay. So we'll move on to the first item on our agenda, which is the meeting to agree and discuss next steps for the package support tooling. So if I might share my screen. Yep. So I don't know if anyone can speak for this issue. There was a meeting a couple of weeks ago. Or was it last week? I think it may have just been me, Michael, and Wes at that meeting. But the summary is we defined some next steps for the support tool. Michael has been, I think, working on a PR. Yep, to update the support tool with our next steps. So I think that's just on the agenda to call out for reviews on that in the pkgjayswalk org. Yeah, so Michael has his PR there. Anything else anyone wants to add on that one or ask any questions? I could try and answer them, but I don't have all the information on that one, unfortunately. Nope. Okay. Move on to the next one, which is submit session for the Collab Summit. So it looks like Wes opened the issue. So we have a 1 hour collaborate session submitted. So I guess we've still got time. We've probably got like 1 or 2 meetings, if not 3, before that session. So I guess the plan is to come up with an agenda in advance. So I don't know whether we want to do that today or just call that out in the minutes and ask for people to post their suggestions on what we should talk about.
I think, yeah, I remember from the discussions prior, and again, I'm not sure if it'll apply this time, but there were definitely comments from last year's summit where the kind of the in-person nature of it seemed to draw a lot of engagement. So, you know, curious if it was because everybody was there, if it was the topics, or out of maybe try and think about what was good and positive about last year's and try and roll that in, or you know, maybe it's more of a snapshot of what we've seen over the past year in terms of outreach, triage, the things that we're working on. And it's like, is it a preview of what we've been working on, or is it, you know, more peer-to-peer with package maintainers, or maybe a little bit of both? It's an hour, so it probably we'll only get one topic, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's intended to be a peer-to-peer type thing or a let's try and onboard some new people or give a status update of what's going on.
Do you have context on that, Michael?
The main thing we discussed last time is we wanted to make it something which would leverage the fact that it's not just the regular group of people who show up at the meeting.
Okay.
So I think it's, we want to do something which will engage additional collaborators, either to get them engaged in this process or to get feedback on topics or whatever other reasons. But that was sort of the key discussion was, we have a good group of people who get together and meet regularly. So us just getting together, since it's going to be virtual, wouldn't be that much different, but it is an opportunity to hopefully get new different people, get feedback on a topic or.
Okay. So it sounds like we want to give a bit of a status update, and also how can I get involved type focus.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I think Glenn had volunteered to write something up based on last time's discussion. Is that jive with what other people remember?
I don't think I made the last one.
I think it's in the issue.
Where was that sent?
Gonna look at the minutes from last time.
If you follow the link from 235 or 335, sorry.
Okay.
Halfway down, there's a link from Wes to the OpenJ. Yeah, there it is. I think there's some call to actions there. I think I'm not sure if this is something we want to have ready for the summit, or if it's more something that we just want to get people there. But we have seen it's kind of ties in, not trying to be selfish, something that I posted at the end, but we have seen activity from collaborators to packages who aren't actually the maintainers. So between Axios and Node Fetch and things like that, we've seen a lot of activity from people wanting to help out, but we've been trying to figure out how do we help out packages that aren't actually being sustained or promoted by their own maintainers, because is there a limited amount of help we can give if, aside from documentation? I guess a lot of times people were asking for help for like, hey, the maintainer's not around and we can't release, we can't do PRs. And so I don't know if we have enough time to think of those solutions, or if that's, a challenge we want to address at least, or at least acknowledge during the Collab Summit. Are we looking for maintainers or collaborators or both?
I know. I think Wes submitted a dedicated Express one, or maybe Garouche did, about the triaging efforts. I think how to contribute to Express.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in this context, we're looking at like, how do we create patterns which can, how could we take the Express pattern and use it for for another project, or how can we do, how do we figure out the general problem?
It's almost like a case study where Express can share their experience so far and trying to have a formalized triage process, and maybe tie in the efforts of this group and how they're able to, like, hey, we were able to use this tool, or we were able to collaborate on this tool with this team, and kind of self-promote both of in the process, maybe.
Yep. I think we just need to coordinate with Wes to make sure there isn't too much overlap or something like that.
Yeah, I think it could be helpful for other packages to see a package like, and there, I think a case study perspective could be helpful. Maybe then other package maintainers be like, oh yeah, I do have those problems. Oh, that's how they solved some of those problems. I didn't know that those resources were available.
Okay. Sure. So I guess we've kind of got some ideas there. Maybe after the meeting, we'll post those on the submit session to the Collab Summit issue. and then from there we can maybe structure the agenda a bit more. But as we've got a few weeks to go, so
Yeah, and maybe just a ping, like if you pasted that there and then mentioned Glenn, because he said he couldn't make it today, but he did volunteer last time to do the session.
okay. So
Excuse me.
and Michael, before you joined, we just went over the package support tooling.
Yep.
Just briefly said that there's a PR that's been opened. I don't know if there's anything more context-wise you want to cover that.
No, just I've been spending a bit of time working on it, and you know, it's not complete, but I think it would be good to start getting things landed just so that we can continually, you know, if other people wanted to then extend it a little bit, they can do it versus an open PR, which is a bit hard for people to collaborate on. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it so far. I've got it so that it's supporting more of the different options that we have in the doc for how you pull in the file, and you know, you can see a tree. I haven't figured out a good way to present that so far, but like if you do show and you give a, you know, in the top level package, it'll list out the information for all the whole tree. Unfortunately today that'll mostly be, there isn't any except for, you know, some, and there are a number of unit tests. I extended the unit test so that it would run for the testing for the command line as well. So there's a bunch of testing, you know, I think there's like 20 different combinations. There's still lots to go on that front too, but sort of starting to build that out.
Okay. Sure. Okay, so that kind of covers the first two items on the agenda. The third one is the dependence tooling. I guess, I don't know, Andrew, if you want to start on this one and give some background, or I can talk about the flow, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll give a quick bit of background. So the main work on this now we have the initial tool to get dependent, is to work on the flow for the actual testing of dependents. So me and Beth have been talking about this, and Beth's opened a PR on pkgjayswalk with just a initial overview, an initial flow, and definitely need some people to take a look at this and just get as much consensus on this as possible.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a deep dive we want to go into today, but there are some open questions on the PR, particularly around whether we automatically open the PRs on forks or on the actual repos themselves. I think that's probably the main question.
So, sorry, I haven't had a chance to go through in detail. Regarding the opening the PRs, I think we discussed this at some point. I think that the initial version should be, so WebJSON, the configuration file should allow you to select whether you want to open the pull requests or whether you want to fork. Or rather, it should be smart enough or configurable enough to know that a repo, basically whatever is defined in WebJSON, you should be opening the pull requests against that. If you own the repository, then you probably don't need to fork it. However, if you do not own the repository, then you do want to fork it. In which case, if it is a fork, then you probably want Webi to know that this is a fork and that it should take the source repository and sync master, just so that you're opening against the latest master. Basically, make sure that the fork is updated. So to summarize, Webi should open up against the repository that is defined, but it should have a configuration option to make that repository updated with the source repository. And I think going forward, it should be some sort of a small tool which allows you to create these forks.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, I think we had some concerns around if people are using like credentials in their setup for Travis or actions, we might not be able to replicate their setup in our fork.
Yeah, I think that is correct. At the same time, these credentials, at least in Travis, you can select which ones are available, which ones are not available on pull requests, and they require human confirmation. And I think it is a valid concern. I'm not sure we have to solve it right now, simply because I think just having the tool out will uncover more edge cases than just that. And at the same time, you should be able, if Webby is configured to open the pull request against a specific repository, it should just do that, right? If it's a fork, then yes, you don't have the credentials. However, in that case, there's not much you're going to be able to do about that, other than set up the fork to have some credentials, right? Yep. Or you will have to contact the original maintainer and ask them whether you can open up the pull request directly on their repository. So I think these are sort of things that do not necessarily need a technical solution right now.
Yeah, I think when Andrew and I were talking, maybe it's worth creating some like fake modules with the module dependent relationship in pkgjays and start testing it out with those, just so we've got 2 modules in there. I'm not sure whether they should be completely fake modules or whether we should actually like fork something like Malta and Express.
Detect node support depends on NV. So that's already one dependency there.
Okay. Okay, sure. Okay, we've already got that relationship.
And I think support also depends on NV, doesn't it?
I'm not sure about that. I don't think so.
Okay.
Which one did you say? Which on
support? Does it
on
depend
NV?
on NV?
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I haven't seen it there that I remember.
Maybe it doesn't. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I think Andrew was going to extend the dependence tool that returns the list of dependents so that we can get like it to either return the random 10 or the top most downloaded or all. That was requested in the PR. And then I think maybe the next steps would be to define the structure of the Webby JSON and just try to gain some more reviews and consensus in this PR. I think
sounds good.
Yeah, once we've got the structure of the Webby JSON and the flow approved, at least as a MVP, then we can probably actually get started coding and building and then review and iterate on that. That's probably all we need to talk about, I guess, on this one for today. We can have deep dive sessions on this for those interested if we think it would be useful. Nope. Okay. Any more questions or anything around that? Nope. The next item in the agenda was the pkgjayswalk, the working group for the tooling.
Yeah, I'm just opening that up to see. There was some back and forth. I'm not sure if we're at the point where we think that's done yet. My last comment was, I addressed the comments from the discussion at the last meeting. Please take a look.
For the last.
Yeah, if you click on 338.
Okay, so what's the latest? Okay, so just waiting on some re-reviews.
Yeah, I'll set myself a reminder to do that this week.
Okay. Anything more on that one other than just to call out that we need to review the doc?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Next one is the next steps on support levels in package.json. Is this tied to the first item?
Yes, and we did have a meeting between now and then as well, and we agreed on an MVP, which was basically to show, just show the support information recursively for basically for the tree of modules and its dependents, as well as validating the support info. So that's kind of what I've been working on in the support tool. I think it's not far off from meeting those two things. I need to do probably a bit more work, and then we can see if we think it meets the MVP or not.
Okay. That was the last thing that was pre-added to the agenda. Owen, you had something you'd like to point us to?
Yeah, please. From the Google Doc, I had added a
Okay.
couple of last-minute items. Yeah, so yeah, starting with that one. So related to the issue below it, as part of working on a document to contribute some governance, some recommendations and suggestions on governance models. One of the early action items was maybe we could structure and create a table of contents for the docs. So I did that. That's 333. And since then, I've also been able to provide a first draft of governance models documentation. So yeah, those are mostly just looking for feedback and peer review and things like that. There's a lot of docs that were in draft states and some that were missing. So I also created issues which could maybe be good labels for like good first issue labels. So yeah, just looking for some feedback. This one's pretty simple, just creates a table of contents, gives some motivations for the team in general, and then just defers all the content to already created docs or sections to be created.
Okay, sure.
And then the governance models was kind of was the original conversation that started it all. And so that's just my first draft there as well.
Okay, so we're
Anything that you want to call out in terms of the governance modules, models or anything?
Yeah, I think, let me pull up my notes here. Yeah, I don't think there's really anything in particular. I mean, obviously maybe the overview, well, maybe not the overview, but the overview and certainly the vision might certainly be subjective. Obviously, it's kind of speaking in the first person from the perspective of the package maintenance group, I guess. And yeah, I guess in general, just curious as to thoughts on the overall structure, the general recommendations. I tried not to rely too heavily on, do GitHub feature X, Y, or Z. I mean, I assume most packages will be on GitHub, but I tried to emphasize like the process a little bit more, like, how to have code owners, or the concept of code owners, or branch protections, or continuous integration. And then at the bottom, I left a section just for GitHub that links to things like, say, GitHub issue templates and all the GitHub, they're all the way at the bottom there. So, for those using GitHub, it could link to those specific things. But I tried to keep it high level. So like I said, it's a first draft. And so, just curious as to the approach, structure, outline, topics, items, overall first impressions, I guess. So any feedback would be appreciated. I think there's a lot of, discussion initially, because I kind of did an initial draft that spawned the making the table of contents. So I think once I got that out of the way, it helped refocus this. So hopefully it's a little more fully formed this time for review.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like the contents for docs would be something good to get reviewed and land sooner. Otherwise, you probably have to keep updating it each time we add new docs, etc.
Yeah, and I think it was also ties in a little bit to the other the community outreach triage. We've gotten outreach from a couple projects, and looking, like Axios in particular was one where we're a little torn because it was contributors who were helping to triage the project, but no one had spoken to or was in contact with the maintainer at all. So it was kind of like we're a little torn in terms of what could we do, or what are our boundaries when the maintainer isn't the one actually coming looking for help. And so and also, I guess, in a way spawned the motivation to kind of for me to move on the docs a little bit more, because worst case scenario, we could say, well, hey, here's all our docs in one place. Maybe you can enable some of these with the permissions that you have, even if we can't help firsthand. Maybe you can apply some of these recommendations to the project in the meantime. So it was just, help with what we have until we know how to handle those situations better. So, yeah, I guess, I don't know if we, anyway, it's also just kind of wanted to draw attention in one place to various package teams that have reached out to us looking for some help, since that is part of the goal of the project. Just wanted to make sure that, everybody was aware, or, now that we have some examples maybe outside of Express to help, we could apply some more of the things that we've learned with Express to those projects.
I'm just looking at the issue you linked on Node Fetch. What's the front on that one?
I think similar. I think John Church was also the one helping to shepherd the triaging effort from Axios. So I think we're, maybe starting in a good way, maybe getting a reputation as like, hey, there is a team that is trying to work on this stuff. So I think it's similar to Axios. It's a similar kind of request for help. I don't know if they're in the same position as in like the maintainer is not available at all, but I didn't know if these were opportunities to be like, well, hey, we've got docs, maybe take a look at those. We've got governance models, take a look at those. If we wanted to start putting some of our work out in the wild for teams to try, if we had things like that, or we were ready yet, or maybe we wanted to wait to the Collab Summit, or I didn't. Anyway, it's just more to corral things in one place to help everybody see the spectrum of what's going on.
Well, definitely, if any of the docs that we have help, we want to share those, and if they're specific gaps, it would be good to know those as well.
That was one of the things I was curious about in the table of contents issue that I raised, because I made issues to fill in some of the gaps. I wasn't sure if there was a policy or review process by which something would get lifted out of drafts into like just the docs instead of the drafts folder in docs, but I did label the ones that are in draft versus the ones that are
right. We probably should look at the ones in drafts and see what we should move up.
Yeah, I think Beth, if you go back to 333. Yeah, I think, yep, please. About halfway down, there's a, yep. So yeah, there it is. So those were, so from the table of contents, you'll notice that obviously the ones that are new don't exist. So those would be, I guess, new potentially as draft. And then there was some that I found that were in a draft state. And so the issue is more like, what would it take to get it out of a draft state? But I'm not really sure if there's a criteria for that, but that's, I label the ones that are, the ones labeled as draft exist, but just in a draft state. So could potentially be moved into just, top level docs.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling we just haven't been good about moving them from draft. So I think it'd be good to, propose any of them that look like they're relatively complete. We should just propose moving up, and we can do a review at that point to confirm if people think they're ready.
Okay.
So if you see one that you want to propose or multiple, just I think go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I can definitely go through at least the draft ones and create PRs to move them out of draft state, and maybe if there's any additional content to add, I can try and do that. But I think I'm wondering if, as a prerequisite, getting the table of contents established would be good as well. I mean, they could be done independently, but I think it's helpful to have the single entry point available as well, even if it's in a draft state potentially.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I think that one, how many reviewers do we need? It's 4?
Yeah, 4.
Okay, so we need a couple more reviewers on that one then.
I'll have a look. Pull 333. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's leave that one on the agenda to make sure that we do remind ourselves each week to try and take a look.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make a note for myself to start chipping away at the draft docs and try and lift them out. And then unless anybody objects, I could put maybe I don't know if it would be maybe help wanted for the new documents.
No, sounds good.
Okay. As a label, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I'll do that. I'll go through and try and organize the follow-up issues from the table of contents, and if I can help lift a few of those out of draft state, I'll do that at the same time.
Okay. Is there anything further on those few other than calling for review to cover?
Yeah, I think that's good. Maybe we can make a note when we meet and talk about Collab Summit if there's if we want to take into account any of the outreach from Axios and Node Fetch to see if that would influence what we'd want to talk about. If there's a common theme to what they're asking for, maybe that's at least worth a bullet point or two as part of the collab. So it doesn't have to be the entire focus, but a little acknowledgement might be, good faith, good credit.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. I don't know, Glenn, if you've had any more thoughts since the last meeting, because I think you were going to do the submission.
Yeah, I have been very busy. As I said, oops, I'm muted. No, I'm not muted. I will be doing it. I will be making a submission. I think this will be a part of it. I've just been very busy with the Express stuff. And I think that's the learning I'm taking away for this. Like, what I think we have found is that getting more triages on, like we bring them in, we onboard them, but it's like you said, there are members, but then there are active members, and it's getting those people to be active
that is, I think, the sticking point. And I think the learning from this is, even from Express, which is extremely widely used, it is quite difficult getting people to come in and actively take part rather than perhaps just attend a meeting once. And that, I think, might be one of the larger items in the collaborators conference. And we need to get outside of the bounds of that actual conference, meaning we're talking to people that are already active by the fact that they're there. And it's the people that are not there that we really need to reach. And, you know, we see it in our day jobs that people are using these tools, but they are not involved in any way whatsoever with the maintenance or upkeep of the tools. And that's going to be, I think, a part of it. How do we do this? How do we keep the ecosystem alive and fresh and ongoing? Yeah, so sorry,
Yeah,
I missed the first 20 minutes.
How do we support and nurture that kind of involvement?
I guess
Yeah,
one of the things, sorry, is that a genuine question, or is that like a question around like framing? Is it like a framing question for kind of what we're talking about?
It is a framing question for the you know, especially for the Collaborator Summit. By default, the people there already participate in the fact that they've turned up. But it is actually quite hard. I mean, the ecosystem is now enormous. And I have trouble explaining to people, you know, the various parts we see here. I must say, Axios, when I interview people, my thing is, you know, I make them suggest how they would fetch something. You know, I have like a loaded question. How would you fetch something from another server into your browser? And that's like one of the top answers that comes up, Axios. Like it works both, you know, server and client side. But there's no real sort of, and we can see that there is an issue, but within the wider community, it's just like it all works by magic. And we need to educate people that it is not magic. There are real people doing real work. And it also comes down to some of the things I think Jayesh has said on other postings, that we need to get companies more involved. And I'm trying to work on that myself, but it's actually hard. For-profit companies like using free stuff. They're not so keen on doing stuff for free. So that's be part of the form journey. Like, how do we phrase that? But by default, if we go to collaborators and we talk, the audience there is you know, is reflection of us. It's like reading a liberal newspaper if you're a liberal, or reading a conservative newspaper if you're conservative. You're just going to get a mirror of your own thoughts. And we need to find a way of breaking out of that.
Yeah, hopefully we get a few more people, but you're right, it'll largely be the same similar group. I mean, and from the beginning, that's kind of been one of our sort of the challenges we've been trying to figure out, is how do we show businesses that it's not, you know, doing things for free, but that it's in the best interests.
That's right.
Kind of like, from my perspective, it's risk management. It's great to use things that are open source and that you get for free, but if you simply use them, you're likely taking on more risk than you should. And so by contributing back, you can actually mitigate that risk. And businesses are good at mitigating risk if they understand it.
And I'm working on this exact message. Trust me, it is.
But it's how do we help? You know, again, it's the tools, and as a one-by-one, it's probably pretty hard to make the message, to make the case.
Well, what we need to do is we need to involve more people on these calls and charge groups that are from the larger enterprise, that are okay with going back and delivering the message to the large enterprise that there is a value proposition. You know, they're already invested, and all of these modules we've talked about are all, I expect, widely used by most of the large enterprises, whether they know it or not. And that's what we need to do.
Right, and hopefully like the support info is one path to
Yeah.
helping to show businesses the dependency trees and, you know, whether things are maintained or not, that kind of stuff to hopefully raise at least some of the visibility. And
Yes.
so again, that might be like, you know, again, that could be, if we had time, that might be a brainstorming session. Although I think, as we discussed last time, we really want to use that session for things that are not just topics we could discuss in these meetings ourselves. Sort of leverage the fact that we'll probably have a larger group versus just the regular attendees.
That's it. Yeah. So we can go out. We can talk. And I was just looking at what I'd signed up to with Wes. As you know, we all know we're all very busy with our day jobs too. And what I'm seeing is that we can have some sample projects express, we can do Axios and so, but within our group, unless we're successful at essentially hiring more triagers who become potential maintainers, and the place where those people live is the big enterprise, where there are lots of them, and it's easy to find. Well, until recently, it was easy to find them by wandering around the floor. Now that everyone's now that everyone's gone home in all the big enterprises, and it looks like almost all the big enterprises are staying out till next year, it might be a little different. So the conference itself is a reflection of the problems that's happening in the marketplace. People can't go to work. It's a remote conference, but we're now going to have to obviously reflect the fact that people are not working and collaborating as they were before. Perhaps that's better for us. Perhaps they have more time. I'm going to write something up for the issue 275. I'll start on that today. I've just I'll have to do less Express stuff. To be honest, I'm spending about an hour and a half just looking at Express stuff every day. And that's what it's made me realize, that even simple things, you have to go away and research. And even then, if it just results in closing an issue, it is very time consuming. It's made me realize it's quite a miracle how some of these projects have been continuing.
Yeah, there's a lot of work there, that's for sure. Okay, thanks. I just thought we'd go back to that one since you're back in. Bethany, back to you.
I'll put a Google Docs link, and I'll get it going. I'll get a Google Doc link on our issue, you know, the links through to the collaborators one, so we have something to look at.
Sounds good.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so we've covered everything and some additional items from the agenda. We've got like 7 minutes or so before the end. So I'll just say, is there anything anyone else wants to raise or talk about, or should I open the board and go through that?
I do have the CI config, Travis, although I know that Jordan probably has some opinions there, so I may as well ping him on the issue, but would just like to point out that issue is open.
What issue is that?
Node.js/CI config Travis repo. So I opened up the initial layout bike shed issue just to discuss how we could potentially structure this repo before we start adding code in there.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think you're right. There will be, you know, I think there's already some existing content, so it'll be interesting to see how that fits against what you have.
Yep.
Sure, okay.
So yeah, just looking for opinions and discussion there.
Okay. Is there anything else anyone wants to raise? We can open up recent issues.
I guess one question I've had recently is with some of the packages, one of the things, like, as someone who's relatively been uninvolved and is starting to kind of ramp up involvement in the package.js GitHub org, like, one of the challenges I've had is the readmes are like relatively sparse, and it's kind of hard for me to jump in. Is that something that has been talked about at all or discussed at all to any degree?
I don't think that's been
yeah.
discussed. I think it's just a matter of they're just starting to get ramped up, or
Okay.
so if you grow the context to want to help make that better, that would be great.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, I was just curious on that one because that was something that was kind of a barrier for me. So yeah, cool.
I see the supported versus maintained.
Yeah, I think that one was just going to be updated,
Okay,
as you can see.
sure. Okay, so there's nothing really else that's been opened recently that we've not already mentioned in the meeting. So yeah, we've got quite a few things from the agenda where we're kind of needing to gather some more reviews. So once the minutes are open, if anyone does have time to take a look and share their views on some of the open PRs and issues we've got, please do. But if there's nothing else, I'll probably stop recording and end the meeting. Yep. Okay.
Thank you all. Cheers.
Thanks all. Speak to you later.
Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.